Good day, everybody. Zack here with RevZilla, and welcome to another episode of Daily Rider, where we learn about motorcycles as we ride. Our special guest this time around is Royal Enfield's Interceptor 650. That is a 648cc air-cooled parallel twin with not a lot of features aside from looking like it stepped straight out of a time machine set to 1970. So, how does a new Indian version of an old British motorcycle handle a modern-day American daily ride? We're about to find out. Here we go. All right, everybody. We are back and ready to roll. Royal Enfield INT 650. Be sort of crown jewel of the bike, this lump of an engine, which is probably pretty heavy because there's not a whole lot to the rest of the bike, but it manages to be pretty heavy. We'll talk about that when we talk about specs. But it is a beautiful engine to look at, in my opinion. It's just like finished nicely, and it's pretty, it's classic. This sort of like sweep of the exhaust pipe is very simple and clean and good looking, in my opinion. Some signs of budgetness. As I said, it's a bike starts at $5,800. I think this one with the two-tone paint, I do believe, is around $6,000. But yeah, you got pretty cheap stamped levers here. The bracket that comes off the frame that holds the exhaust pipe and the passenger foot peg is not removable, so you know, if you bend that, the frame's bent. So these are signs of bikes that are built to a price point. There's same thing on plenty of other bikes from Europe and Japan, for what it's worth, but probably notable. Also, no adjustable levers, stuff like that. We'll talk more about that. But in general, build quality is pretty good. I think I like the paint. It's nice and rich. It's clean. Branding's nice. It's a sleek looking bike. It's got a sort of quilted pattern on the seat that I like. And braking hardware is on the other side here. This is a 320 mil rotor. You can see the ring for ABS and a Bybri caliper. So this is the Indian subsidiary of Brembo, so Bybri is by Brembo. And yeah, this brand is used on sort of low-level KTMs, 390s, and that kind of thing. So yeah, anyway, pretty standard componentry. A handsome bike, I think, and it sounds quite good. Let's fire it up. It actually has aftermarket exhaust on it, S&S exhaust, which I believe costs just about $700, $675, I think, for these slip-ons. Normally I do not do aftermarket parts on the Daily Rider, try and get bikes as stock as possible, but this is what was available this time around. So we get to bask in the lovely dulcet tones of aftermarket pipes, which are slightly louder than the stock ones. Okie doke, pretty good rundown, right? Let's see what it's like on the daily ride already. And off we go. Cloudy, cool day here in Los Angeles. Got my wax cotton jacket. Feel like that was appropriate for the retro faux British bike here. As I said, 648cc parallel twin. Seat height, I believe, is 31.6 inches. Memory serves. Friendly reminder while we're going through all these specs that all the specs are listed in imperial and metric numbers in the description of every Daily Rider video. So that's where you can find all these numbers that I list right here. And fact check me, see if I'm remembering things correctly. So yeah, 31 and change inches of the seat, nice and approachable. We'll talk about that. We're at a stoplight, which I foresee in our future. On the Daily Rider scales, 569 pounds with a full tank of gas, which is pretty heavy, especially for a motorcycle that only claims 47 horsepower and about 35 foot-pounds of torque, I think. So yeah, not a rocket ship. We're probably not going to be doing any really long wheelies today, if any. It carries its weight pretty low, so those 570 pounds are not so bad. And the other thing I wanted to mention is sometimes bike weights can be a little bit skewed the way that I do them because I measure bikes with a full tank, and of course fuel weighs something. So a bike with an 8-gallon tank is going to give up a little bit to a bike with a 4-gallon tank because it's going to carry an extra whatever that is, 18 pounds of fuel, something like that. But the fuel tank on the INT 650 is 3.6 gallons, so it's kind of a small fuel tank. But yeah, still, like I said, a bit of a heavy bike, but it rides nice and low, and in general is pretty darn comfortable. it feels like sitting on a motorcycle. It feels like the sort of like prototypical basic standard motorcycle, especially ones from 40 or 50 years ago. Okay, as we're headed toward the freeway here, did we get all the specs? I think we did. We have fuel capacity, seat height, weight, claimed horsepower, CCs. What else? Am I forgetting some? Whatever. Oh, it's pretty good. I'll get more to the engine later, but I was surprised to hear that it only had 47 claimed horsepower, which probably means only low 40s on the dyno or something, but I don't know if it's the 35 foot-pounds of torque. Also not a very impressive number, but it feels good. Accelerates nicely. The bike's great at this, honestly. It's totally happy. It's quite smooth. The riding position, again, is pretty comfortable. There's absolutely no wind protection, obviously, and that's kind of a bummer sometimes because you end up just holding on for dear life a little bit if you try and go faster than this, or if you want to go 75 or 80, you can do that. It's just a little bit more stressful for your body because you're just getting all the wind right in the chest. But as I said, nice flat seats. You can slide back and forth and kind of lean into the wind a little bit if you want to. And I'm very impressed with how smooth the engine is at this speed. 75 miles an hour, just sort of hums along. It doesn't vibrate too much. It just seems happy enough. It doesn't seem stressed. Yeah, I got mostly good things to say right now. One thing that's definitely true, and I don't want to forget to mention it because I was just talking about how smooth the engine is that the mirrors are not good. They're really bad, and I don't really know why. They're kind of like in the right place, and they're not a terrible shape. They're just, I don't know, they're kind of warped, and the view is odd, and they vibrate. Like, they're not even vibrating that much. They just like wiggle around, and I don't know, they're not very good, which is too bad. I feel like it's sort of like, it almost makes me think, oh, it makes me think the engine is making the bike vibrate, and it kind of betrays how smooth the bike is to ride. When I look in the mirror and it looks like that. I feel like if you just put a nicer set of mirrors on here, it would work better, but I don't know. I think that the bottom line here is that it's not an inherently comfortable motorcycle from an ergonomic and wind protection standpoint, and also the seat is a little stiff, and yeah, not great after a long day in the saddle, certainly. But yeah, like I'd ride this thing to, I don't know, I'd ride 1,000 miles tomorrow and it would be totally fine. I wouldn't be as comfortable as I would be on a, on a luxury bike, but I'd probably be, I don't know, just about as comfortable as I'd be on anything else you can get for $5,800, I think. I don't know, what else? Anyway, the point is, it's surprisingly sort of smooth and capable and willing to trot down the freeway at 75 miles an hour, considering it's, arguably kind of a budget bike. And speaking of efficiency of the engine, actually, usually I've done all the fuel mileage figures, but I didn't calculate my most recent mileage figures on this bike. I'm gonna have to pull over and do that so that I can report back to you. Coming to the end of the freeway stint here. Oop, red light, son of a gun. I gotta say, I'm not super sad to be off the freeway. Okie doke. Trundled into the neighborhood here. But before we do, I'm genuinely curious about the whole fuel mileage thing. And I feel guilty not having reported to you, the loyal viewer. So I'm just gonna do that real quick here. We're in my gas mileage document here. This goes way back. Look at this. Aprilia Kappa Nord, Hyper Motard, MV Agusta F3800. You need any gas mileage figures, you let me know. 50 mpg and a 3.6 gallon tank. Is that what I said? Anyway, so you're gonna want to get gas every 150 miles, depending on your route and how aggressively you ride. I'm glad I know. I'm glad I can tell you what my actual data was, for crying out loud. Okie doke. We're hitting the road again. Time for the old neighborhood stop sign test. I don't know that the Interceptor 650 is going to be super great at this. There we go. First footless stop in the books, not so bad. The 0 mile an hour thing is a little bit nebulous with the analog speedo here. You can kind of fudge it a little bit. In general, the Interceptor 650 is very polite around town, very polite. I've been super impressed. The fueling is not totally perfect. It's a little that, like, herky-jerky on-off thing is like a little easy to get into. You just have to be a little gentle. Sometimes I find myself going through intersections. Hey, another old car. I wonder if that's also a 2020 model. Probably not. Anyhow, sometimes I find myself going through intersections and dragging the rear brake a little bit instead of getting off the gas and then back on, because it's a little herky-jerky, especially with the passenger on board. But in general, yeah, it's quite easy to ride. The balance is pretty good. The rake number on this bike is actually pretty steep, so that's the angle at which the fork is attached to the frame, and it's a 24-degree rake, which is pretty aggressive. It's usually sort of a sport bike territory, but yeah, it works pretty nicely. Feels a lot lighter than the nearly 500 pounds that it is, and in general, good clutch feel and good sort of feedback from the bike. It's easy to ride. I would definitely recommend this bike for someone who is getting into bikes, or you know, maybe they had a slightly smaller one and they want to upgrade a little bit. I would for sure put this to a new or returning rider, because I think it's an excellent platform and it's executed quite nicely, especially for round town riding. So as we approach this stop sign, I'm not going to go for a footless stop. I'm going to talk about foot peg placement when you're at a stop sign, because I heard some people complain about this, and they said that every time they put their feet down, they hit their legs or their shins on the foot pegs. I have not had that problem, but I will say that at 6'2", it's very easy for me to flat foot, and I sit pretty far forward in the seat. I think if you sat a little bit farther back and your legs were a little bit shorter than mine are, then you might have that problem. I don't mention that as a criticism of this bike, because it's a very personal thing. I've had bikes where I put my feet down and my feet hit my legs hit the pegs, and I think that it totally sucks, and then I ask a colleague or a friend or something, and they're like, "Oh no, I haven't had that problem with that bike." So it's very specific to the way you sit on a bike and your positioning and your size. One thing about the foot pegs that I think is a little funny is that the casting sticks out pretty far. I find myself putting my feet on the sort of like frame, or the piece of metal that comes out from the side of the bike to hold the foot peg. So it's sort of like a clunky design thing that I don't love. Okie dokie, Lover's Lane, talking about passenger accommodations, as we often do. My lovely wife has not ridden on this bike, but my hetero life mate Ari Henning did ride on the back of this bike with me, and he did not complain about anything horrible. I think it's a pretty basic passenger accommodations. It is a very flat seat, as I said, so if your passenger is your height or any shorter, they're not going to be able to see over you. So in general, I don't think it's going to be great for passengers, and I can tell you based on the rider's section of the seat that there isn't a ton of padding. But aside from that, definitely has enough power to shoot down the freeway with two people on it, and yeah, reasonably comfortable for what it is. Righty, into our twisty road section. I've been looking forward to this, actually. This is a nice set of twisty roads for the Interceptor 650. It's a little bit bumpy, but the suspension action on the Interceptor is pretty good, which is excellent news considering you can't really adjust any of the suspension at all. And yeah, I spent many hours on this bike, trundling through canyons and having fun, and I have to say, I was pretty impressed. I never dragged a foot peg or really found a limitation of the bike. I will say that a bike like this doesn't really, you know, provoke you into riding super fast, you know, like it sort of makes you want to cruise and take it easy. But in general, I found the handling to be really good, just like linear, easy, enjoyable to sling through corners, and it's not what some people think it is, which is just basically just an upright cruiser, you know. It actually has yeah, you can lean on the tires a little bit and enjoy yourself on a twisty road, and it'll have fun doing it. I think one of the reasons that I don't find myself wishing this bike had more power is that I don't feel the need to go fast. It's not like baiting me into it, you know, like when you ride an Aprilia Tuono or something, it's always like, oh yeah, come on, twist it, do it, man, I freaking dare you, come on. But this bike just sort of, it's like, we're having fun, let's take it easy. You want to like rev it up a little bit out of a corner, cool, that's fun. It's the right attitude to have on public roads anyway, if you ask me. All right, out onto this main thoroughfare here. And let's give it the noise. It's great. If memory serves, there's Interceptor twins that were made and sold in the 70s. I think it was a 680cc, something like that, and then it was later bumped up to a 750 maybe, or 760, and then Royal Enfield went belly up in the US anyway. And so there's sort of like a whiff of history and pedigree with the Interceptor name with Royal Enfield, which I can appreciate, but I also appreciate that they kind of shook the Etch-a-Sketch and tried to build a bike that was applicable to the modern day rider. Someone who wants a Triumph Bonneville, for example, but doesn't want to pay that much for a brand new one. And I think it's a pretty good play, actually, to make a bike this size. All the other bikes in this category, whether it's a Triumph Bonneville Street Twin, or if it's a Kawasaki W800, or oh yeah, Scoot Life, nice, respect. That guy's relaxed. W800 or the Moto Guzzi models, they're slightly larger engines, and Royal Enfield went for a sort of a smaller air-cooled twin, and I think they did a good job positioning it in the market, make it quite a bit cheaper than the other bikes available, and make it look good and feel good to use. And there's no horsepower war in this class, so why the heck not? Alrighty, here we go out onto Vermont Street. Little honk for Vermont Street. So we can talk about brakes as we approach the stoplight here. There's ABS, which is good, because the brakes are strong enough to lock up the front wheel, which it just did. I just engaged the ABS on the front, which I appreciate. Pretty good traction from those Pirelli tires, in my opinion. I did get a comment on my Instagram page when I posted a picture of this bike, and someone in India or Malaysia, maybe, I think India, said that after about a year they found the brakes got pretty shitty and faded, and they need to put new pads in that had more bite. And so that's one piece of feedback from the other side of the world, if it helps you. In general, I think the brakes are pretty good. The rear and the front both feel pretty sharp and progressive and good. Dash is very simple. Look at that. Tack on the right, speedo on the left. A little LCD in the middle that has trip A, trip B, and odometer. That's your lot. You want to know what time it is? Figure it out yourself. Just as well that you don't know what time I'm doing this daily ride. Not exactly on time for work, let's just put it that way. But yeah, very simple dash, but I think they did a fine job. It's a classic. I mean, it's a great look for the bike, and you know, you arguably don't need more information than that, so respect, I suppose. So I did also receive a question on Instagram about should you make this bike into a scrambler. So, ooh, nice footless stop, juicy. So we'll experiment with how this bike handles on our dirt shortcut here. My prediction is no, do not make a scrambler out of this bike. It is very heavy and low, and I don't think you should make a scrambler out of it. But, you know, oop, they don't have a stop sign. Everybody be cool, Zach. Okie dokie. Here we go down the dirt. Oh man, still big puddles here. It hasn't rained in a while. Still big puddles. So should we stop and shut off traction control? Just kidding, no traction control. Okay, that's probably enough of that. Yeah! I mean, if it's one thing Royal Enfield is probably not going to be afraid of, it's trundling down a little gravel lane or something, right? Built like a gun, as they say. And yeah, this bike's fine. And actually, getting a little Swayze on it reminded me. I did the slide school with Royal Enfield. Got some instruction from Johnny Lewis himself. It reminded me of his Royal Enfield flat track bike. Here we go, small jump. Let's hit the big one. Why not? Shall we? Oh boy, I'm gonna regret this, I think. Oh boy. Well, the suspension didn't bottom out, but I can't say I'd recommend that. That's for sure. See if it'll pop a wheelie, shall we? I haven't actually tried this yet. Oh, we got a little one. With a clutch slip in first gear. We got a little wheelie. I wouldn't recommend that, though. It wasn't very satisfying. It seemed like it was hard on the clutch. So, I mean, yeah, I don't want to make too big a meal out of, like, oh, the bike can go down a dirt road and you can hit a jump on it and like, it'll do a wheelie and wow, what a bike. I can't believe the value of it. I guess I just was I would not have been surprised if the clutch feel was bad and the transmission was crummy and there was vague, crappy handling and the suspension bottomed out over stuff that it shouldn't have and the switches felt like they were going to fall apart and that kind of thing. You know, like there is a maybe somewhat unfortunate reputation for bikes made in certain areas of the world that they're not going to be high quality, and certainly that reputation follows other models from Royal Enfield around and even other brands. So yeah, I guess maybe part of that got to me, and I was thinking that some of that stuff was going to be true, and I guess I'm just pleasantly surprised that everything is pretty reasonable. Let's see if we can back it in here. Going to the right. No. Doesn't want to back it in. Right, one more try into the office park. We got a little one, but not much. Doesn't love that. And we'll trundle over and do our little U-turn test, a little parking lot test. Yeah, the steering does feel really sharp at this speed. Not too sharp, but pretty sharp. All right, here we go. We're in our parking space. We're going full lock to this side. We're turning. Yeah, parking spot and a half, maybe 1.6. That's pretty good. It's got decent steering sweep. That's pretty good at this speed, I gotta say. We get the foot peg down, there we go. Maybe I just woke up on the right side of the bed or something. But I think that the Royal Enfield Interceptor 650 will make you feel like you woke up on the right side of the bed. Plus a standard center stand. Are you kidding me? All right, let's pump out some revs here. Hopefully we don't tick off the neighbors too much. Oh, it sounds pretty burly, no? Cool, man. Instagram questions, here we go. First up, Ash Trick asks, which is better, Interceptor 650 or Continental GT 650 in Royal Enfield family? Okay, I'll raise my hand right now and I will tell you I have not ridden the GT, the Continental GT with this engine in it. I did ride the Continental GT 500, the single, but I do know that the ergonomics are a little more aggressive on the GT, and I will say that I don't think that more aggressive ergonomics would be good on this bike. I think that this is the way to go. Maybe you want something sporty, you want the look of the Continental GT. I get it. It looks, kind of sexier. This one's like a little more upright and dorky, but I'm not going to tell you which one is better since I have not ridden both, but my instinct is that why not just get the one that is a little bit more comfortable. I think it looks great still. So L Doty, was it I Doty or L Doty? Someone Doty asks, even though I'm sure it's totally incorrect, I still have this idea about Royal Enfield being notoriously unreliable. Thoughts? Yeah, so we talked about that briefly, right? This reputation that that sort of follows Royal Enfield around. One thing I would like to say, and the reason I saved this question, is that in the United States anyway, if you buy this bike, you do get a 3-year unlimited mileage warranty and roadside assistance from Royal Enfield. And I feel like they wouldn't do that if they thought their bikes were going to break down. Maybe they would. Maybe that's the whole point, is that like, oh, our bikes are going to break, so we prepaid tow truck for you. But I don't think that's the case. I think what they're saying is, we think the bike's going to last and we think it's going to be fine. And we'll prove it to you by paying for every single time you need a tow truck for the first 3 years you own the bike, which I think is pretty good, I guess. I don't know. Make of that what you will. Little Joe 13 says, I have a 2009 865 Bonneville. How does it compare to that? Good question. It's been a minute since I rode an 865 Bonneville, but it does remind me of that for sure. I think that the 865 Bonneville, I'm not sure which one you have, but there was a 17-inch wheel one, I think, and then was there also an 18 or 19? The 17-inch wheel Bonneville from that era, in my opinion, was a little sharper, I believe. And I'm not sure if it was 09 or maybe it was 2012. Anyway, the point is, 17-inch wheel bike from that era, I think, was a little bit pointier and a little bit more agile than the other bikes. In general, though, very, very comparable bike. I can't speak to, I don't have in-depth knowledge of the 865 Bonneville as far as longevity and that kind of thing, but I do know that my good friend Spurgeon Dunbar wrote a story about owning his Triumph Bonneville for 15 years, I think, or 15 years, I think. So that's an article you can look for on Common Trade at RevZilla.com, and Spurge will tell you all about what it's like to own a Bonneville for 15 years. SpazBand85 says seat padding looks a little thin. Better than it looks? If so, how comfortable is it? Not very comfortable. It is a little thin, as SpazBand points out. It's a nice seat. It's fine. You know, I always sort of equate seats to the fuel range, right? You're going to need to get gas after 150 miles on this bike anyway, and by that time you're going to want to get off the seat. So that's how I would rate it, I suppose. TWP says, looks beautiful. How solid are those dial gauges? That's right, I remember this. I don't know why you're asking about solidity of the dial gauges, but pretty solid. I don't know. They're on there. Yeah, they don't wiggle around or anything. They're mounted with this sort of cheap stamped steel bracket that's not terribly interesting, but I don't know. Yeah, and they got little rubber mounts there, so they shouldn't come apart. Not that the bike vibrates very much, but I don't know. Hopefully that answers your question. Tausif707 says, like the footpeg positioning? I do, but the reason I saved this one is I wanted to show you guys that tab I was talking about when I was riding. So yeah, see this how it sticks out here? I just wish the footpeg, if they want to have the footpeg here, just have a slightly longer, like a thinner bracket if you want to do that, instead of having this big chunk of metal, because I sometimes want to put my foot up there and then it's kind of like awkward. But other than that, yeah, footpeg's position is good. The ergonomics are good in general. TMHall.js asks, this versus the XSR 700. That's an interesting comparison. That's not one that I would have thought of, which is why I saved this question. Yeah, the XSR 700, because it's built on that MT-07 platform, definitely feels a lot more modern and a lot kind of rowdier, especially the motor. So kind of apples and oranges to my eye, but if you're shopping, I don't know, I think both are interesting. The XSR 700 is going to offer more performance, and it's quite a bit lighter. And actually, one more thing I'll mention. When my colleague Ari rode this bike, he is very familiar with vintage Hondas, and he said this Royal Enfield Interceptor 650 reminded him basically of a perfect early 70s Honda CB450. He's like, you know, power-wise and the feel of it, it feels just like that. So yeah, again, it's an old bike that has been rebuilt and created. It's a new old stock motorcycle. It's not a particularly modern bike that just looks retro. It actually just is kind of old, which is cool. Unless you want an XSR 700, then maybe you should get that. Buckholtz Joel asks, how comfy would it be for long distance rides? We sort of already covered this while we were doing the ride there. Yeah, pretty good. I mean, not super comfortable, but people have ridden long distances on stuff that's way worse than this. So don't let this motorcycle or one like it be the reason that you don't ride long distances. Yeah, hit the road. That's what I'd say. Okie doke, that is it for Instagram questions. Thank you so much, as usual, for asking those questions. So bear with me here. We're going to jump inside. We're going to put this sucker on the Daily Rider leaderboard. And yeah, we'll have this sucker in the books. Hold up. Okie dokie, everybody. Here we are. Oh my God. Okie dokie, everybody. Here we are in the Bat Cave of RevZilla West and the old Daily Rider leaderboard. And over here we've got the Royal Enfield Interceptor 650 ready to go on this list. That's the top 5 as it stands. And the Interceptor 650 was good. Not top 5 material though, I don't think. Sorry. Not as good as a Street Triple R. Not as good as a Street Fighter V4S either. So you got a couple Triumphs down here. Triumph Daytona 765 Moto 2. That's kind of a bespoke sport bike. TFT dash, traction control, some nifty features, very good brakes, that kind of thing. But kind of uncomfortable. And I think the Royal Enfield's got a beat, frankly. Yeah, it's just Royal Enfield Interceptor 650 more comfortable, more reasonable. You don't really need a TFT dash or traction control to get to work or wherever you're going on your daily ride, do you? No. Is a Royal Enfield Interceptor 650 better than a Yamaha MT-03? A similar amount of options, similar riding position, similar horsepower. Interceptor is probably a little faster than the MT-03, but you know they're comparable and a comparable price. Interceptor is a little more expensive, much better looking in my opinion. I digress. I think we're gonna slap this sucker on the leaderboard right here, underneath
Yamaha's MT-03, and just above the Triumph Daytona 765 Moto 2. If we compare the Interceptor 650 to the CBR 500 and the MT-03, you know, those are pretty high quality bikes, albeit ones that come at a reasonable price. But the things that the Interceptor 650 was particularly good at, in my opinion, those bikes are also good at. Clutch feel, transmission feel, general sort of usability, practicality, versatility, that kind of thing. Those bikes are actually quite good at those things. And I don't think that the Enfield really has a leg up in that scenario. So anyhow, a mid-pack finish for a $6,000 retro bike made in India. That's not bad. I suppose Royal Enfield, if you're watching, I hope you're proud of the effort. I think it's in quite good standing. It's in good company there on the leaderboard. We just got to get a Royal Enfield tag there. You know, I'm a little behind the times there. My bad. There you have it. Royal Enfield Interceptor 650 on the Daily Rider leaderboard. Another ride in the books. As usual, I hope you learned a thing or two. I hope you had fun, and hope to see you next time on Daily Rider.
Same day dental implants. Jeez Louise and cheese. That seems aggressive. Like, I'll wait till tomorrow if you can do it right. I don't like billboards. Give everybody the wrong idea.